But what I'm saying is, it's this fear-based model of incentivizing viewership that has been actively corrosive to American society.
Kyle Clark does not have much of a name recognition in town. He has to be on this show so it could boost his popularity.
For sure.
You're on another station somewhere.
I am. Not many people have heard of it. It's 9 News, but I appreciate you bringing me on the blowtorch here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I hope you do well with that.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to your subterranean
Is this a new station?
Lair. 9 News, it's not new, it's just little noticed.
How long have you been at 9 now?
12 years.
Nuh-uh.
Uh-huh. Time flies when you do virtually nothing of importance.
You still look like you're 22 years old. What the hell?
I was hired at 11.
Yeah. No, really. How old are you?
I'm 36.
Still a baby. God, I just understand. I don't like young people at all.
Certainly.
Which means every day there are more people I dislike.
Sure. Yeah, that side's winning.
Yeah. When you were you hired directly as anchor?
No, I was a weekend general assignment reporter, and I was doing weekend reporting. Then I was working on our storytellers, kind of our long form feature storytelling for a while. I worked on the investigative team, 2-week stint on the weekend morning show, and then Ward Lucas retired after 33 years, and then I started doing weekend evenings.
Because apparently he's human. Which when I went to, I remember as a kid in the 70s, Ward was there.
Yeah.
You know, we called him Ward Mucus, as everybody did. So, when did you start anchoring?
I started anchoring. Boy, I couldn't even tell you the date, but it was probably about 5 or 6 years into the run, and because I was on the evenings with Adele prior to her retirement, and then now with Kim. So I think I've been anchoring for a good maybe 6 to 8 years. I'm so terrible with these dates, but I've been doing it for longer than I was reporting.
Did you work with Adam Schrager?
Absolutely.
He was one of the tops in town.
Agreed.
I miss him. It is hard to get the TV stations to have a good local reporter. When I mean that, local political state house guy who is actually there all the time.
Sure, especially now.
I mean, your guy with glasses, he's good, but Adam,
I think Marshall is in the mold. Marshall Zellinger is in the mold of Adam Schrager. I will say this. With both those guys, and with Brandon Rittiman in between, had literally thousands of hours of political discussions with them, and have no idea what they believe politically. We just don't. I mean, but as you know,
because they're vacuous people.
They're not. They're the smartest people in the world. But as you understand, like you can have a political discussion that's based on persuasion, and then you can have one that's based on observation, and all those guys are great political observers.
I think they're all reporters in the good sense of the word. You know, that they, I don't even know if they do have an opinion, but they've all been good. And yeah, Marshall knows his stuff. There's no question about it. But the little glass tie clip.
I like it.
I hate it.
You should tell him that.
I do.
Okay.
Being he's young, so.
Yeah, that too.
Being the nighttime anchor, that is the king of the roost, it seems. Every law student is taught that you want to be a judge someday. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm assuming in television news, you want to be the anchor. Is that true?
I think different people have different interests. I mean, it certainly it doesn't satiate all my interests in terms of what I want to be able to do. Because if you're doing the evening anchoring gig, you're not as involved in the hands-on daily journalism. That was one reason why we launched Next 3 years ago, because I wanted to be more involved in the actual reportage of stories and actually working on stuff. I mean, it's one job that's there. Yes, it's a high-profile job. It's a job that people aspire to. But if that was the only thing that I was doing, I don't think I would still be at 9 News, because it doesn't connect with what I want to be doing every day, which is getting my hands in it.
I could never be the anchor because 1, I'm bald, 2, I'm old, and 3, I can't read.
That's a devastating trifecta.
Yeah. So basically, you just need a pretty boy monkey who can read.
Sure, that's me.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it.
It's nice. You're going to look like this someday. You'll be out of a job.
How soon do you think that's going to happen?
Happened for me, 38.
Oh, geez.
Exactly.
I need to start preparing.
Prepare bad.
All right.
I want to dive into Next, because Next has been something I think pretty special, in that nothing personal. I hate local news.
Sure.
It's not news.
I kind of do too, but
it's planting your petunias. It's sports talk. You know, instead of telling you what the weather's going to be tomorrow, you take 5 minutes to tell us why it's going to be the weather it is tomorrow. We don't. I don't
forget
care.
the high in Sheboygan. You need to know the high in Sheboygan. Yeah.
So you know, there was a time growing up that you watched the news because Carson is on right after, and everybody did. Nobody watches. Nobody. This place is so crowded, nobody goes there anymore. But I've never liked it. Next hits a very different thing. I think there was a real need for something like that. How goes it, ratings-wise?
It is the most watched local news program in Denver, anytime, any channel, and it's not close. Which sounds incredibly self-centered to say, but you ask the question and that's the answer to it. And it's I think really interesting because the show was not designed to be that. It was designed to be a sidecar. It was designed to be an accompaniment to the main product. It was not designed to necessarily be a ratings success. Now, it couldn't be such a phenomenal failure that we couldn't afford to keep it on the air because we're in for-profit media. It was going to have to turn a number. But I don't think anybody associated with putting that show on the air 3 years ago thought that it was going to be the most watched thing in town.
What's been your best screw-up? What have you really misread?
Boy. Best screw up. I mean, you know, there are the times when your mouth just catches on a word, and like
I wouldn't know.
My max attempts 3. If I make 3 attempts at a word and it's not coming out, we're looking for a synonym. You know, I've butchered some place names. That's what we started a segment on next called "What Do You Say," which is where we ask locals, like, well, what do you say? Lots of people want to say, oh, the right way to pronounce it is this, or the right way is this. I don't know. What do you say? It's your town, you know. So I've butchered place names, fumbled over things. Never had hiccups on the air, which I think is like the fear of a lot of people.
No, my fear is I have coughing fits.
Yeah.
I have coughing fits, and one time I had to stop a taping.
Yeah.
And I had to cough for 15 minutes, and I was fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind being drunk. No one seems to have noticed that. But the coughing, they will notice. Back to Next.
Yeah.
Next, I think, really scratches an itch that we need, especially as talk radio continues to shrink and shrink, and newspapers continue to shrink and shrink, to have at least a moderate dive into something that shows a couple different points of view. So I'm not surprised. Here's the big question. So 9 News, still number 1, I'm assuming, in the TV wars that we've seen since I was a kid.
Yep.
But now there's 5 of you.
Yeah.
And you own, you guys own 2 stations.
9 and 20 are together. Yep, we own
Channel 4 owns 2 stations.
They have a digital channel. But
no,
it's
it's 2 and 31.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Who cares? Does it even matter anymore? So you had a great Nelson rating or Nielsen rating. Who cares?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think the answer.
Growing up, everybody knew Ward Lucas.
Sure.
I mean, everybody knew 9 News. Now we've got double the amount of people here, and I imagine as a percentage of viewership, it hasn't kept up with the growth.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I'm an anonymous face on a wanted poster. Yeah. No. I think the answer is news still matters, information still matters, content still matters. People are more connected to content and news and information than they ever have been because it's right in their hand and they expect it all the time. Broadcast TV is a shrinking piece of that pie. So I think you've seen for the last couple of years, I don't know that we even really celebrate ratings successes anymore because it's such a shrinking part of the universe. I mean, yeah, you want to win. It's better than losing. But at the same time, like, that portion of the business doesn't matter so much anymore. It's, are you serving people digitally? Yes, we look at the number of people who watch Next each night at 6 o'clock. We also look at the number of people who DVR and watch it later, who watched on YouTube. When we started the show, we put up full 30-minute episodes on YouTube every day. I believe it was the first time that our parent company, Tegnet, ever allowed anybody to do that. And you're looking incredulously, like, how do you make money on that? You know what I mean? Or
well, no, actually, I was just, I mean, we put everything on YouTube.
Sure.
And that's great, but we're not monetizing this.
Exactly.
You guys are.
Sure. And what we're doing is we're trying to meet people wherever they are with the content so that hopefully they understand that we're doing things differently, that we are an honest broker with a different take on the day's news. And if they watch us on TV sometimes...
Do they actually watch the whole half-hour news on YouTube?
Sure.
Start to finish?
Sure. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're going through the effort to find a 30-minute program on YouTube, then there's a decent chance you're going to watch a lot of it. And then we also put short clips there. But the goal is to meet folks where they are. And do we want to be their first choice on over-the-air TV? Absolutely. And you want to be their first choice digitally and on YouTube and on social media. You want to be in all those places. So it's a little bit tougher to pull it all together, but that's where the customers are, so we don't really have a choice.
The blur between text news, on-the-air news, used to be very good divide. You partner with the Denver Post. Many years at KOA, the news guys would just basically rip something out of the Denver Post and read it. It was just the easy thing to do. Channel 4 would always partner with them on things. Now it's getting really blurred as the Post and, the Rocky's gone and the Post just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. You got to pay to read the Denver Post. You got to pay for the subscription to go online. When you go to Complete Colorado, which does better traffic than 9 News, by the way, that's not really true, but you go to 9 News, there's not a paywall.
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference today. Am I wrong? I mean, you're still going to be cluttered with ads wherever you go, but I think the lack of a paywall for TV news gives it a real advantage.
Sure. I mean, it's one advantage. I mean, but everything's a trade-off. I mean, when folks come to 9news.com, they know that they're going to get news, but they also know that they're going to be served ads. They're going to see ads on the side. There are going to be pre-roll ads and so forth. So people are paying with their time. 15 seconds of your time prior to the 30-minute show, that's what you get. With the Denver Post, you're paying to subscribe. I do. Once you get behind the paywall, I don't want to be bombarded with ads. I've paid. I've paid the toll.
I've paid the toll too. You still get bombarded by ads. They're not
as omnipresent.
Right.
Yes.
You can click out on them a lot faster.
They're going to be different models. And Denver, I think, is in a really good place at a hard time for media in the sense that we have a lot of different models in the ecosystem right now. Colorado Public Radio is going gangbusters right now. Hiring staff, expanding their reach. They brought in Denverite, which was doing really cool stuff on the subscription model. The Sun is fascinating and is doing really serious work. And I think as a news consumer, you don't have to choose. You can dabble in each, do a little broadcast TV, little Sun, little this, little that, and I think that that's great. And I also think that it's changed what we view as our competition, okay? I'll give you an example. The folks in charge of the company gave Next some ad dollars to help spread the word about the fact that we're doing something different on TV, okay? So where are we going to put up advertising? I mean, we can put up advertising on our own air. We could put billboards around town.
And you need your own
ads, whatever else. Yeah, and we do our own air, but they gave us money for outside media. We put it on Colorado Public Radio. We put almost all of it on Colorado Public Radio. Why? Well, I mean, it's not charity. They have listeners. We want to reach those listeners. I think that some of what they do meshes with what we do. And worst case scenario, what have we done at the end of the day? We've supported other local journalists who are doing work. Is that stupid that we're handing our competitors money? I don't think so, because I think the definition of a competitor in the news environment has changed.
I've said this now for years, and so I'm going to keep saying it, and so people will say, he was right back then.
Sure.
I believe Colorado Public Radio in the next 5 years becomes the newspaper of record.
I think you're probably right, yeah.
And let me just describe the terms. One, newspaper record, in that somebody needs a trusted source to go who won the election. And the reason they will do it is because they have a funding mechanism that works. So they've got 2 channels, over the air and online. As people get more comfortable with online, that's going to build for them. But more importantly, people just give them money in the same way they give the zoo money. They feel it's a good, it's a good citizen thing. They got like $3 million in car donations. There ain't nobody donating a car to 9 News. So this, and they say they don't have commercials, but of course they have commercials. You just
with the underwriting. Yeah, Next. I don't know what they called it, but Next was in that vein. No, listen, I get it. I have donated a car to Colorado Public Radio. I am an Evergreen member. I give them money every month. They are my competitor, but they're a strong news source in the community, and we're better off for having them, and so that's why I support them.
See, I don't see them as a news source. I see them as a political operation. Laugh all you like.
Sure.
laugh all you like, but they have a political bent that they are completely blind to, and a worldview that everything wraps around. So all their stories are told in the same way, showing the same answer to the same folks. And this is, if I could do one test, academic test, there's my favorite book. It is what drives me in the last few years. It's called The Three Languages of Politics.
Okay.
Basically says that political junkies usually fall in one of three camps: libertarian, conservative, progressive.
Okay.
And that we see the world in different viewpoints, and therefore our words are very, very different, and the way we tell stories are very different. One is, to do the shorthand, one is very victim-oriented, the fight between the oppressed and the oppressors. For conservatives, it's law and order. It's order, civil society versus chaos. And for libertarians, it's liberty versus chaos. That's all I see. That's how I see the world. When you listen to NPR, especially, CPR is much better than NPR, you hear one viewpoint, which is why people who listen to Fox News hate this. They feel unwelcome. It feels hateful to them. But for others, it feels very, very, very comfortable for them. My suspicion is if you were to give a test to CPR reporters or reporters in general, they fall into that progressive category. I'm not saying that they're political operatives. I'm not saying that there's some sort of conspiracy to do something. I'm just saying that it brings in the same type of people. The same people are drawn into it, and therefore there is a lack of ideological diversity. You can go to any of these places and they'll talk about how many minorities, how many women, how many people from the LGBT community, all this. How many conservatives? When I know a lot of the folks down at CPR, when Trump was elected, I got it from 3 different sources. Not a single one of them voted for Trump in the newsroom.
Folks in the newsroom told other people how they voted?
Yeah, well, because people chatted, and
that's not a normal thing in any newsroom I've been a part of. I will say, to kind of step back to your broader critique of media bias, I wholly accept almost all of what you said.
And just the Trump thing is that 46 or whatever percent of Coloradans voted for Trump, but a news source which claims to be non-biased in something that shows ideological diversity, goose egg. And I hear it screaming out of my car radio every day, and for me, it's downright hateful. It's downright, we don't want your type here because we don't speak your language, we don't speak the way you do, and we speak in a way that rings to this group, not to these groups.
Sure. So here's how I see media bias. I think, journalists are biased because people are biased, and journalists are people, and everybody's a product of their own experiences.
There's some debate about that.
The journalists are people?
Yes.
I have heard that debate, actually. Everybody's a product of their environment, I do think that journalists are uniquely, or at least especially, attempting to counteract the impact of those biases in their day-to-day work. You know what I mean? I try to be cognizant of the environments that I'm a product of. I grew up in a 2-parent household. I have always been, and presumably will always be, a straight white guy, which is a pretty decent way to go through life in America. We were never in poverty. I was the son of 2 teachers. So that was kind of my upbringing in a small, very conservative town. County went 2-1 for Trump over Clinton. So that's where I was raised. Those were the folks I was around. The question is what mindset is the norm? What's the base standard of a community? You know what I mean? So that was the base standard of the community that I grew up in, and now I live in the city of Denver. Yeah.
Mind you, growing up here, city of Denver looked very much like where you grew up. I mean, for me to watch my state change into what is becoming California is heartbreaking for me. So this is pretty new because people your age keep coming into my town.
Yeah, no, it's definitely our fault. So I think journalists should be aware of their biases to the extent that we can be, actively counteract those in an attempt to be fair, and to not pretend like there are robots rolling off an assembly line somewhere that are going to be perfect, unbiased humans who are going to practice journalism. That's the reason why I shake my head in bemusement at the journalists who choose not to vote, because they feel like that allows them to say that they're unbiased.
Yeah.
And I will say That's their choice. That's fine. It's not my choice. I don't seek to impose my choice on other journalists. I see a lot of them seeking to impose that choice on other journalists. That this is the imprimatur of impartiality. Just don't vote, and then who could ever question your work? Yeah, and I would say this. And so you are an example that I use in the talk that I give on media bias, which incidentally only conservatives invite me to give. I don't know why, but I'm always happy to do it. And go and I speak to a number of Republican conservative organizations about this. And I say, as I look at the media of which I'm a part, I see us having a bias toward three things. Incidentally, they all start with P because I'm a news anchor and I'm good at alliteration. Power, personality, progress. Those are the three things that I believe journalists are, as a whole, as a group, predisposed to. Power. I think we're attracted to power. I think we're fascinated by power. I think we like talking to and featuring powerful people.
But do you also like being a check on power?
Some journalists like being a check on power. Some other journalists like snuggling with power.
I agree.
Okay. And I think that crosses some ideological lines. Personality. I think journalists are attracted to big, compelling personalities. And I think that also crosses ideological lines. And the examples that I give is honestly the amount of times that you have been quoted in the media and that people like Tom Tancredo have been quoted in the media. Why? Because you're big, interesting people who say interesting things. And journalists are attracted to that because we're attracted to somebody who is willing to say something provocative or thought-provoking or interesting outside of just kind of the benign, safe, beige area in the center. And then, and I think this speaks to what you were talking about, this idea of the progress narrative. That progress or change is inherently good and the status quo is inherently bad. And I think that we as journalists really have to focus on that because outside of perhaps the area of historic preservation in the city of Denver, in which I think there is a bias toward the status quo over progress, change, whatever you want to call it, I do think that journalists are often sucked into this idea that someone who comes along and wants to change something is making progress, and what is progress? It's change with a positive modifier put on it.
It depends what the progress is. If the progress is educational choice, more charter schools, vouchers, so people can go to private schools. No,
not considered progress by the wider media. No, that's very fair. And I guess so. The question is: are the advocates in that space, like school choice, framing it as a progress narrative, which they could? Have they wholly ceded the landscape of progress to the progressives, and are trying to make different arguments? And what is the role of the journalist to say, maybe we should just call change?
Where do you put the gotcha journalism? And there's a real place, I don't know if there's a better term for it. It's my term of gotcha journalism. You said this, but you did this.
Sure. That's not gotcha journalism. That's accountability.
It depends on where the target is. Because what I have found with gotcha journalism is that people of this bent get hit with gotcha journalism a whole lot more than people with this bent. And having done this now for, God, going on 3 decades, I've whispered to reporters, hey, there's a good gotcha story here. They'll jump on it. Hey, there's a good gotcha story on the left. Well, and I'm not, so there's an 80-20 rule. You'll still get it here, but mostly it seems to hit here. I'm not saying it's not deserved. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying that the targets get looked at over here. And in the Trump world, Trump is nothing but that. I said this, but I'm doing that. And people don't care because we don't care.
It's priced in.
Yeah, it's priced in. Nicely put. So where do you put the gotcha journalism?
Sure. So my goal is to apply a consistent standard. If you've seen me apply a standard to one person on one side, you should see me apply it to somebody on the other side. That said, if you apply a consistent standard, you think about that as a line, and person A crosses it 10 times and the other person crosses it once, we're going to call out the one person 10 times, the other person once. And actually, if we're being honest, we're probably not calling out the one person 10 times because it gets tiresome. We're probably doing it 3 or 4 and giving them a pass on the other 6 and then hitting the other person on the one time that they do it in an attempt to be consistent. I encourage folks to look at what we do, especially on Next, and ask, are you applying a consistent standard? I get asked for a lot of, you ding them, now ding them. Nope, that's not what we do. That's like the worst NBA officiating that you've ever seen. You know, like everybody knows what those calls look like. No. But like, let's keep it in the sports world. Whatever your strike zone is your strike zone. It doesn't change depending on which team is up. What is your strike zone? Call it fairly. And some people are going to say, like he's got too tight of a strike zone or he's got too big of a strike zone, but call it.
If your camera is turned on when your opponents are playing or at bat, and then your camera seems to be someplace else, or not there as often, you're not going to call as many strikes.
That wouldn't be fair.
Right, and that's what I think a lot of people in my world see with the media, which is why I'll save that story for next time. Let me ask you this part.
Yeah.
Which, for me, given that our 3 models, libertarians and conservatives, which, by the way, are very different.
Sure.
And I don't think people realize
You're so
that.
excited that you found a book that acknowledges libertarians as a third and equal leg of the stool.
No, trust me, it's not third and equal. It's
just clinging to this.
It's like a little weak appendage hanging out. No, actually, for me, what it really helped me out with is the difference in my side of the movement, because at the Independence Institute, what I do is try to bring conservatives and libertarians together so that we can win over the progressives, which do a much better job of coalition building. And so Republicans and conservatives, we agree on 95% of stuff, and then the stuff in the middle just gets people to blow up. And I've always wondered about that. I was like, how can especially social conservatives be anti-liberty on different things?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think that President Trump and just kind of like the ideological reshaping that he's had on the Republican Party, which is undeniable, has that brought libertarians and conservatives closer together, or has it exposed rifts and pushed them apart?
Depending on which vantage point you're on, I think it's done more to bring them together, because a lot of libertarians, we've been looking for disruption. We've been looking for somebody to blow things up. And he is blowing things up. And for a lot of people who are tired of the elitism of insider party politics, he is blowing that up. Then if you look at it from the goggles of pure policy purity, building a wall, a lot of libertarians, I'd fine with building a wall. Build it if it didn't cost anything. The tariffs, we go, that's uncomfortable with that. The judges, we love. The executive orders, we love. The deregulation, we love. So just like everything else with Trump, it's a jumble.
Sure, because it seems to me like not just his victory, but his fundamental reshaping of the party suggests that it sounds pejorative to say the Republican elite, but at least the Republican establishment.
Yeah.
That thought that they had a governing majority and a significant group of Americans that if they didn't win everything, they won a decent amount of time, agreed with them on their policy goals. They don't at all.
Right.
They really do not. And it's astonishing how fast that veneer was wiped away. And all of the people saying, but what about fiscal policy? But what about this? And the voters didn't care. That wasn't why they were with the Republican Party. They were with the Republicans for different reasons. And Trump stripped it down to its bare essence. And all of a sudden, they're butts in the breeze.
Yeah, the frustration I had with George W., one of the most fiscally illiterate presidents of my lifetime, in that I'm a limited government guy. And he grew government outside of the military at a faster rate than when LBJ was president. And so we teed it up for Obama to come in and just kick it into high gear, and now Trump is doing the same with deficit spending. So getting back to the libertarians and conservatives, what I want in media is for them to take their words about diversity and stop making it about people's genitals and skin color, and instead make it about people's ideology. That since progressives are drawn to media, go to any J school and you're going to see it. There needs to be real affirmative action. There needs to be a way to pull in people of real diversity. What's between your ears is more important than what's between your thighs.
Who do you want to mandate that?
I want there to be an awareness in media and for them to have the same excitement about doing that as they do with the pride of saying, look how many women we have in our newsroom.
Sure.
No, I don't want anyone to mandate it. Let me give you a case in point.
Sure.
NPR, listen to NPR and hate all their stories. And they did this wonderful story on the Fed, the monetary Federal Reserve. And it was all about the lack of diversity, that they were all white guys. There were no women. We need more women. And they did this huge story. Now, there's one big lever that the Fed has. Do we have loose monetary policy? Do we have tight monetary? I mean, that's it. Nowhere in the story did it explain why we want women there. Does that mean we're going to get more or less? It was just, we need women there. And it was so crazy. And what I want is awareness in the media that we have no libertarians, we have no conservatives. But if you could have 3 of those, we would not feel that listening to CPR that it's hate radio because there'd be enough for us. We wouldn't pick up the Denver Post and people on my side call it the Denver Compost. We wouldn't feel that way. But I feel like talking to people in the media about this is like talking to your alcoholic uncle who makes it your problem.
Sure. Well, no, I hope that talking to me doesn't feel like talking to your lush uncle, because I mean I can only speak for the newsrooms that I've been in, and I've been in the 9 newsroom for 12 years. One thing that we talk a lot about is are we a team that's composed of people who have divergent life experiences? Okay,
Very millennial thing.
Sure. I'm 36, whatever. Do we have people?
I don't mean that as an insult.
Yeah, no,
but it really is.
Do we have people with different life experiences? And as we've talked about here, your life experience is in large part shaped by the fact: are you gay? Are you straight? Are you
Right.
black or white? Or so on and so forth. And where you grew up, how you see the world. Did you go to a 4-year college? Are you at the start of your career, or are you 15 years into your career? Have you always been in front of TV lights, or do you have expertise on something else in life and then came to journalism later? We're going to be a better newsroom if we have diversity of life experience, which will reflect, if done correctly, gender diversity and racial diversity and everything else, and will include that diversity in outlook that you're talking about. I mean, you say ideological.
I'm going to disagree with you.
You say ideological, and I think you reduce people's views to this ideological prism because you're a political junkie and I'm a political junkie, but you know that people are not that political. They're not as political as we are, but they do have a view about the world, and we should have a diverse set of views about the world in our newsroom, and we should do better at that.
Disagree.
Okay.
I think we're on the same track, but we can hammer this one out. I don't care how many people you have who grew up gay or grew up in a black part of town or like skiing versus camping.
Other people do care, and there's a way to acknowledge their desires and yours.
Fine. But the political pressure is not on that right now. The political pressure is on diversity. Diversity is this big word. So my daughter goes to school, and diversity is plastered on, and tolerance and acceptance, these words are plastered on the walls. When they found out that she's pro-gun and my fight with the city of Boulder over gun control, she gets bullied to the point where she comes home crying because of their tolerance and diversity. They still agree on the worldview, on policy. So what I'm looking for in media is the same amount of thing going. We want to bring in people with these diverse lifestyles. We want to bring people in who are black, and we want to bring in Tricia Takanawa, best Asian reporter ever. And we want to bring in gays and lesbians because of that experiential, all those experiences are different. I want there to be something that recognizes, hey, we all have these different experiences, but when you look through this policy viewpoint, for the most part, we all look kind of the same. We all fit in this category. There's different views and different levels. We really have nobody from the other side, which is why when Fox went on all those people came running over there. I would love to have a news place that had a real split between libertarians, conservatives, and progressives, because I would trust that. And what I would really trust are the conversations, the newsroom conversations. The mornings, how are we going to report this story? And somebody says this way, and the other person goes, are you kidding? You're not going to talk to him? That's where the diversity is going to matters. So what I want a real affirmative action program. I want newsrooms to go, we're lopsided. The very first thing I want is for them to recognize it. And I swear to God, in 25 years, I've never had a news director to say, I think you're right.
So this has got to be devastating then to your thesis that I do largely agree with you that we should have people with different views of the world, whether you want to call it ideology or worldview or whatever, that we should have that in our newsrooms. I think we probably have a bit more of it than you think. Just as somebody who is in these discussions every day, I also think you talk about the reporters in a morning meeting talking through stories, and that is a huge blind spot for us in terms of it's like word association. You throw out a word, everybody throws out the word that associates. If everybody in your room throws out the same word in association, that's a bad room.
Right.
You need different people in that room. Ideally, what you want is to throw out an idea and have people come at it from 4 different angles, and suddenly you've got a rich experience. It's almost as if somebody in local media should start a new show dedicated to talking about the issues of the day in a way that everybody else is not doing. I'll take that to heart and maybe start that 3 years ago. I'm just saying, what you're saying makes sense in the idea that we have to come at things from fresh and divergent angles. And I would also say, I'll just throw one more thing in here. In an era when
that was very coordinated.
It wasn't that good. It's like we're a synchronized swimming team. In an era when journalists are trying to do more with less, just due to declining ad revenues and so on and so forth, the idea that there would be a press conference where an elected official is talking or something like that, and there are 6 cameras lined up, all taping the same thing, and 6 journalists all asking a variant of the same question, is stupid. It's foolishness. One of the first
questions... It's a waste of resources.
It's a waste of resources, yes. And if you're going to go... So here's a question I ask my next reporters. Is anybody else on this? Is anybody else doing this? If they're doing it, how are we doing it differently? What question are we asking? How are we pushing back in a way that nobody else is? Because if all we're doing is asking the same questions to the same people, let somebody else do it. I don't have the ability to cover every story in town, and I don't think it's a wise thing to do. Let everybody else in town do the same story. We're going to go that way. One of my best mentors in the business, Rachel Barnhart, who was a reporter and then got out, and she's run for office now. She's in elected office. But she always used to chide other reporters who would butt in on her interviews because she asked very contrarian questions. She would always say, if you see everybody go that way, you go that way. Don't even ask about what they're doing. You'll find out what's going on over there. You go in the other direction. And then when somebody else would put the microphone in for her questions, she was known to say, this isn't a group project. Because she took pride in asking intelligent, well-reasoned questions that were of a contrarian nature. And she wanted to present a variety of diverse viewpoints and really challenge the public officials as opposed to just being in that chorus asking the same question.
So I ripped on you guys saying you need affirmative action to find libertarians. To be honest, I don't think you need many. I think it takes 1 or 2 conservatives and libertarians in that morning meeting to change the whole flavor of things. I don't think it takes a lot.
And you don't think that they're there now?
I am certain they are not there now.
That's a very bold statement from somebody who's not in the room.
Understand?
Yeah.
I had 6 years as a cartoonist in 50 different papers.
I'm not saying you're ignorant of media.
I am there, and I know these, and I love reporters. They are the funniest, most intelligent, personality-filled people.
No, we just like flattery, and thank you.
But it's true. I mean, if you're going to hang out with people, these are great people to hang out with.
Big drinkers.
They used to be even more so. Today they're teetotalers compared to what they used to be.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I stick by my bold statement. I was at a wedding reception. There's a woman I know. She's in her mid-60s. Sweetest could be. In my mind, she wears white gloves and pearls, and never heard a nasty thing. And mentioned something about the media, and she said, "Fuck the media." And And what
So you met my aunt.
Yeah, so I met your mother. But there's a real nerve out there. And what drives me nuts is that, broad statement, mainstream media
Sure.
have no fucking idea that they created Donald Trump because of the incredible, in my point, the blind spot that they have. And that every time I listen to NPR or read most of the articles in the Post, I go, yeah, this is why you voted for. There's no balance here. People know it. Fuck the media, and they voted for Trump. Let me be it on my side for a second.
Let me jump in real quick on that. So I do think that one of the biggest self-examinations that the media needs to have is look at an environment that produces an anti-media candidate who's wildly popular. Look at an environment in which parodies of the media, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, SNL, are more popular than the media sources themselves often. That should cause some pretty deep self-reflection for us when the parodies of us are better than us.
Have you seen any real self-reflection since Trump in the media? Have you ever seen people go, did we cause this? Did we build this? Because I haven't seen it. Have you?
I'm not privy to the media conversations. I mean, I know the conversations that I have with Marshall Zellinger, who reports politics in town, and with my boss and so forth.
But journalism associations. There are conferences. There's the.
Do I seem like somebody who would enjoy that kind of thing?
No, but you're still tied into the world.
Sure. So I guess what I would say is I do think that at least the folks that I talk to at 9 News are fairly reflective about the impact that journalism has had, because you have to understand, launching Next 3 years ago was a direct response to the fact that broadcast television for the last 50 years has served primarily to scare the shit out of people so that they will watch it more.
Yep.
Okay? We've made people afraid of their neighbors, statistically in fear of their neighbors when they should not be. We make them fear things that are in their refrigerator.
And by the way,
Yes.
Corona is leading.
Corona is leading. I would just say this is going to air sometime after we tape this. I just ask people to look at the current science, listen to the CDC. That's all I'll say about that. But what I'm saying is it's this fear-based model of incentivizing viewership that has been actively corrosive to American society. That it not only pushed viewers to our newscasts, it pushed them away from their neighbors, it pushed them away from science, it pushed them away from expertise, and put them in this model of fear, entertainment, okay? And Next was designed to be our small pushback to say, you don't have to thrive on division and ignorance in order to get people to watch. We had this idea that you could bring commentary back to the news, have it be non-ideological, have it not be based in policy, but in shared values like transparency and accountability and fair play and things like that, and that people would watch it. And what happened? 72% of the viewers went away. Because the viewers who were in the space for broadcast TV were not interested in that. But you know what? Other people were. And now they're in the door, and we have more of them than we did before. And I hope that we will continue to grow. Because there is a market for non-fear-based conversations.
I've been ragging on your industry. Let me rag on my side of the aisle.
Sure.
Which is, we have not done anything to bring people into journalism with a different point of view. And mind you, from our point of view, I've talked to people who dabble around the edges, who should be in journalism, and I try to tempt them in, and to a T, each one is like, why would I do that? And why would I go there where I'm so vilified and feel so unwelcome? Why would I, as a gay man, go into the moral majority? Why would I do that? That's their feeling, but we haven't done a good job of pushing it. At Independence Institute, we try to fight back in the small way we have by offering something else, including this show, Complete Colorado, which is an incredible news aggregator with its own reporters, and I appreciate every time you guys, when we break a story, it gets on Next, and
if you guys get it first, we'll cite you. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, you read it.
Yeah, sure.
so we're trying, at least in my little universe, in the same way you did next. We are trying. Complete Colorado has been around now for almost a dozen years. Last year, we had readership growth, unique visitor growth, of over 60% in a year. So people want local. People want something different with a different tone. People don't want paywalls, and we were able to do those things. As a movement, as we have not sent people into different journalism schools. We haven't created alternative things other than maybe Fox News and a few truly partisan things.
Does it give you any pause? I know that you guys have your own independent reporting, which makes up a portion of what you do. But does it give you any pause that the majority of the links on Complete are to enemies of the people?
Not at all. Not at all, because Complete prides itself, mind you, I don't run it, Mike Krause does, and you don't want an illiterate guy running the news department of any place. But it is modeled after AP-styled good reporting, and if there's a good story out there and it's a news story, we'll get it, which is why we'll end up going and clicking through to 9 News often more than a newspaper, because you don't have a paywall, and we want our readers to be able to read those things, which makes a big difference. And so we want to offer people a quick hit, updated twice a day, of you come here, here's what you need to know about all things Colorado from a political point of view.
Sure.
And news is news. And we'll link to.
You do. I mean, you link to folks all over the state. I was just curious. Because you trash the media a lot.
I have never.
And then you link to the media to populate your page. I just didn't know how you balance that.
I think about the Colorado Independent. Susie Green is a dear friend of mine. We're on the opposite sides of the universe, but their work is solid.
Yep.
And it's the same thing I'll say about, as I was saying about NPR. The work is solid, but their viewpoint is going this way, so they're missing that, and the way they say it is this way. But if the story's good, yeah. And the other thing what I love about reporters is that they will push back. They'll come back and they'll say, this is wrong. They're people. They're proud of their work.
We're remarkably self-important.
Yes. Lawyers and journalists are very much the same, in that if you meet them at a cocktail party, it takes about 20 seconds before you find out what they do for a living.
Sure.
It's just that one gets paid and one's washing dishes someplace. How is the pay at Channel 9, by the way? Doing okay?
I have no complaints. They treat me very well. It's fine.
How long is your contract?
That's not something I'm going to talk about.
Really? Where is Denver on the attractiveness of all the markets? So I know that, well, I was a maid anchor in Topeka, and now I am moving over to Butte, Montana, and that's, a step here from a step here. And I think Denver is like the 16th largest metro.
16 or 17, somewhere around there.
And by the way, my years in radio, it's kind of the same thing, is that people try to bump up, and if they land in L.A., there it is. I don't think I'd want that job, but
there you go. It's about where do you want to live, and what do you want to do. And it's kind of where we started the conversation about how if all I did was anchor a standard newscast every night, is that a job that I would stay in? And it's not.
Yeah.
If
you have kids, you'll stay in it.
Yeah. I mean, yes. If I did not have a financial alternative, certainly. But at the same time, here in Denver at 9 News, here's a station that is willing to try something different, willing to suffer the initial financial hit that was significant because they believed in the concept, which is now thriving. I mean, I feel tremendous loyalty to them for doing that. And I don't know what other station in the country would allow me and my team to do what we do on a daily basis. Really? Yeah, I mean, because here's the deal.
Is the news world as corporatized as talk or radio is now? Radio used
Nothing is as corporatized as radio.
Okay. I think newspapers might be getting there. Maybe no, I take that back. Still not as bad as radio. It used to be radio was WKRP. Every station was its own weird thing, and it was delicious.
Yeah.
And now it's cookie cutter, and the guy who does traffic here does it at all stations. That's why
You flip country, so I listen to country because that's what I grew up listening to. And you flip around, everybody's playing the same song, just 10 seconds off,
Yeah.
because they're all on the same satellite. Yeah, it's annoying.
or what I love is they've got guys doing traffic, but they're in Pittsburgh, so they switch. Well, at Vasquez Boulevard,
Arvada.
Arvada, out in Louisville, bad problems. Before we wrap up, I want one last thing I wanted to get to, which was the difference between you and Ward Lucas in the day, which was one of the reasons I believe talk radio is conservative, is that it's a two-way communication. It was the internet before the internet. That if I said something stupid, any truck driver with a cell phone could call right then and have the exact same access to the airwaves, unfiltered for the most part, and we have a 7-second delay if he swears. But when it came to newspapers, even the feedback is filtered. The NPR will we got letters on this that said that. No, but that guy wasn't on the air you never gave equal time. With social media, that's changing a bit depending on the venue. You tweet a lot. Now, tweeting is also, I don't know if you do much Facebook stuff or not, but tweeting is advertising for your show, so you've got to do some of that. It's also advertising for you as a personality. That helps. But you're also opening yourself up to all the usual hate.
Sure.
And I love the hate. I thrive on
I like it a little.
You like it a little?
I like it a lot.
You like it a lot, the hate?
I like it a lot, yeah.
Really? Tell me about that.
It's endlessly entertaining.
Yeah.
It's endlessly entertaining. I mean, the other thing, whenever somebody writes in, and I would dare you to find any other broadcast TV program in America that presents more unfiltered feedback than Next. I just think that's where we are in the continuum. It's not talk radio where somebody, it's just them on a 7-second delay, but I think we've incorporated unfiltered, very critical feedback to an extent that nobody else has. In terms of the feedback, you always want to look at it, even if somebody's being vitriolic, do they have a point? Maybe they have a point. Buried there in all caps and F words, like they may have a point that you should consider. Sometimes the criticism really makes you rethink the way you've approached something, or at the very least, the way that you've communicated it. Because even if you think your communication is perfect, if it's received by a significant number of people in a way that you didn't intend, that's on you as the communicator. And then there's the aspect of the criticism and the hate that's just deliciously hilarious that I love to share with other people just so that they can have some fun with it. And,
when my daughter gets bullied, I say, really? Come here. We go online. And here's what they're doing to Daddy. But you do it a little differently. You enjoy your snark. It comes across in the show, which exposes your cards, because when you give a dig, then you break the fourth wall. In other words, I'm no longer a bystander reporting. I'm still in the fight, and I give an insult to this guy or an insult to that guy. And mostly you're doing it for the yucks. I understand that. But on occasion, we get to see, oh, he really feels that way about an issue. On Twitter, you seem to do it a lot. And has that ever bitten you in the ass?
In what way?
That you put out something and the bosses come in and say, you can't say that, or that you threw out something and go, oh, as we all do. An hour later, that was a wrong thing to say.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. But that's human communication. I mean, I know I did that one time when some people were going back and forth, and I kind of stepped into the middle of it with something I thought was witty, and I didn't understand the tone around the conversation. Oh. And it was one of those where everybody turns to you and you're like,
oh, I've never felt that. So.
I'm sorry about that. And that was a failure to read the room, but we do that in real life too.
Do you do more social media than most of your peers? I cannot keep up with social media because you can just drown in it. But our governor, for instance, is a social media hound. I'm sure he's commented on your stuff. He comments on I think it is mostly him. Because
I think a lot of it is him.
I've known him for 20 years, and I know his voice. Yeah. And so I think it's often him, and it's always you. It
is. It's never somebody else. Yeah. No, and I love it. I love getting into it, but it's like anything else. You know, if you're constantly talking, you will occasionally say something that you look back at and go, oh, that doesn't look great.
In the new media world, does every reporter need to do what you do and respond on Twitter?
No.
Because you respond too.
Yeah, a lot. And I think everybody has to find their own comfort level, and the fact that I enjoy the engagement and have done it relentlessly for a decade means that people know that they can get answers from me and know that if they have criticism, it doesn't just get thrown into the circular file. You know, I do take it to heart. I read it. I respond. If I disagree, I'll tell the person that. People who write angry emails to me don't get a form response. Okay, and they get a response that meets their criticism. You know, think about the guy who wrote in last night. He was really mad that I said that Polis did a good job on his COVID-19 briefing yesterday because he was calm, he was confident, he focused on the science and focused on proactive actions and not just hope. I was very critical of his first COVID-19 briefing because he misstated some of the science. And we called him out on air about it and had a commentary saying, we need to be able to trust you to get it right. You're not inspiring confidence. So when he did this time, I said good job. And I said that he really gave us a blueprint on how it could be done. Guy wrote in and said that that I reminded him of the Nazis and that I was ceding authority to the government and that I was the greatest threat facing this country. I wrote back to Mike.
I would say your biggest threat facing your media market, but
well, sure, but
and I mean that in a very bad way.
So I wrote back to him, and it was not, "Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. Have a great day." No, I met the dude where he was. Like we had a conversation about the Nazis. Like, and I don't know that that's healthy for every single reporter to do. That's the way that I handle it. But I think that we meet people where they are. And I think that we also, especially when we're talking about social media, because this is public, and this I know is a big point of contention, I think unanswered charges can be really damning in a social media environment. If somebody comes forward on social media and says, you manipulated this, you were wrong, you skewed this, I think we have a responsibility to meet them and say, maybe actually no, here's the evidence.
In your world, yes. In my world, there are professional trolls that do nothing, but whenever you say something, go, or you know that they're constantly throwing bombs because it's what they do. In your world, maybe when you said the governor did a good job or the governor did a bad job, there's an editorial comment there.
Yes,
and so I get to say I'm not in the media. I mean, I've been on the media, but I'm an editorial guy. I give my opinion. There's no other way. Now, you're the anchor, you're a reporter, then you go on to Next, and you're an editorialist. Conflict?
There certainly would be a conflict if there weren't clear guidelines about what I do offer commentary and analysis on and what I don't. You know, I'm not out there saying, you know, the governor's tax policy is good or the governor's tax policy is bad. I'm telling you the governor's tax policy is consistent with what he said in the past, or it represents a substantive shift and he should explain why. Okay? So as long as people can comprehend the difference on that, then we're good. So take these briefings about the coronavirus. I would hope that everybody would agree that if the governor makes a factual misstatement about a public health issue, it is the job of journalists to correct the record. Okay?
All right, but
that's what we did. And then I take a step further, which is to say, we're trusting you, Governor. This is not inspiring confidence. Please do better. Okay? I would hope.
But you see, those are two different things.
100%.
One is the front page of the newspaper. Yes. The other part is the editorial, House editorial of the paper. All right. So since I'm on the editorial section of the paper, and that's probably what I'm known for, how would it be if I took your job at 9 News and to be the anchor? You know, people would go, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. He has no credibility doing that because we know where he is. He's an editorialist. Does Next threaten you the same way?
Again, it comes down to...
Or is it just only a matter of degrees?
I think here's the deal. This requires folks to engage in some small level of nuance. Okay? You're a policy advocate. You have policy expertise and you advocate on policy. I am not a policy expert And therefore, I don't advocate on policy. I advocate based around shared values and on the most basic level, calling BS. I think to myself, when Mayor Hancock, in his State of the City, I think it was 2 years ago, called out his family in the front row. This is right after the whole dust up with that DPD officer that he was coming on to, and talked about how his family has borne the burden of his decision to seek public office. And that night I said, horse.
Really?
Yeah, no, they've borne the burden of his decision not to pursue office, but to pursue that woman who worked on the police force. Okay?
Not to mention a few hookers, which 9 News almost ran with.
So I had a feeling you were going to bring that up. That's a story that I was not intimately involved in because we talked about 12 years ago. I was not reporting on politics or investigative. So I don't have insight for you there. I know what's said. I know what's in the ether, but I don't have insight for you there. But that to me, again, feels like something calling the mayor out to say, hey, don't put this off as politics. Take responsibility for your actions. That's not policy, but is it an editorial comment? Absolutely. And it's one that we've decided that we're comfortable with in the same way that commentary was a staple of television for a long time prior to Fairness Doctrine and everything else getting scrambled in the 80s. Carl Akers did commentary on 9 News for years. Yep. He's a newsman, okay? I have a book of his commentaries, and I've read them. He strayed a bit more into policy than I do, but largely stayed out of it around what should we largely agree upon as a society simply because we're neighbors and we have to cohabitate. Let's work on that stuff first and let the policy people do the policy. Did I convince you?
Not at all.
I gave it a good try, though.
You could be a politician with that.
I don't think so. Yeah.
See, wrapping it all up, and then we'll finish it.
Yeah.
When you said, it's great quoting you, Caldera, and Tancredo, and others, the reason is politicians are the worst people to interview. They're the worst people to quote because they have to first appeal to the swing voters, appeal to their other constituents. You know, they can't say what they want to say.
You forgot donors.
And of course donors.
Yeah.
You know, which is one of the reasons I think people love or hate Trump is that he just says whatever he says.
Sure.
That was a great political answer. Going to run for office after this?
That seems like a miserable way to lead your life.
Yeah. I don't know why anybody does it. Hey, thanks for spending time. This has been great. We ought to do it more often.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You should get a window down here.
No.
Well, sunlight. Best disinfectant. A little transparency.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button, too. You don't want to miss a single show.